Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us tonight for another guided meditation and Dhamma talk from Bhante Suddhaso. So this evening, welcome so far to Gita, Kauser Friend, Ron, Jens, Kumu, Denise, Mary, Adine, Mimi, Melinda, Venerable Vimalanyani, Seal, and Yudi as well. So thanks everyone for joining us. Yudi says, I'm happy to be back with my favorite monks.
Oh, that's very sweet.
And greetings as well to Amir from Manchester, UK. So good to see everyone. So I'll pass things over to Bhante Sudaso, who will lead us in some meditation to start.
So you can start by getting in meditation posture. So whatever your usual meditation posture is. The standard recommendations, once again, sit up nice and straight while also being relaxed. So we're trying to cultivate a state of mind which was both peaceful and alert. And what you do with your body influences that. So you want your body to be relaxed while also upright. And that helps to encourage the similar qualities of mind. So taking a moment to really pay attention, especially to how you position your legs and how you're sitting on the cushion. If you pay close attention to the sensations in your sitting bones, they will actually tell you if your legs are going to fall asleep in a few minutes. There's a subtle sensation which indicates upcoming leg numbness. So pay attention, and eventually you'll learn what that sensation is. And when you recognize it at the start of a period of meditation, then you can adjust your posture before the problem even starts. So pay special attention to the sensations in your sitting bones and your upper thighs. Those are the places where leg numbness normally starts. Also make an effort to tilt the base of your spine slightly forward, which is supported by sitting on a cushion of the proper height. That helps to allow the spine to be upright without effort. And the head balances on top of the spine, with the head tilted very slightly forward. Not much, maybe 5 or 10 degrees forward. Very slightly forward. Just enough to bring the spine into a fully vertical position. And bring your hands together in your lap. So resting together in your lap with your thumbs lightly touching. Rock side to side slightly if you're still feeling a little imbalanced in your posture. And once you're settled into position, take 2 or 3 long, slow, deep breaths. With each breath, letting the body and mind relax. And just appreciate not needing to do anything, not needing to think anything or say anything, not needing to move the body in any way. No need to remember anything, no need to plan anything, no need to worry about anything. Just taking a moment to appreciate the peacefulness of doing nothing. And bring attention to your body. So feeling the body resting on the cushion, solid, stable, unmovable. As steady and solid as the earth, as steady and solid as a stone. So feeling the heaviness and denseness of the body. The soothing weight, the peaceful solidity of the body. And let your attention rest unmoving in the body, bright, clearly knowing, steady, motionless. And enjoying the experience of the body, enjoying mindfulness of the body. Perceiving the body sensations as pleasant, satisfying. You can let a smile come to your lips as you bask in the pleasantness of body awareness. Feeling the warm, pleasant sensation all through the body. And with each moment, slowly intensifying that feeling of pleasantness, like blowing on a coal, fanning a flame, gradually coaxing that euphoric sensation into greater brightness and intensity with each moment. So, the solid stone mountain that is your body, gradually glowing brighter and brighter with a radiant euphoria. If you're practicing mindfulness of breathing, you can synchronize this with your breathing. As I breathe in, intensifying the euphoria. As breathing out, intensifying the euphoria. So with each breath, brightening, strengthening that intense, radiant, blissful euphoria all throughout the body. Keep brightening the glow of euphoria in the body. Enjoying awareness of the body. Perceiving the whole body as pleasant, delightful, magnificent. If you get distracted, just come back to the solidity of the body, its heaviness, density, firmness. And then slowly resume building up that bright, pleasant euphoria, enjoying awareness of the body. So you can adjust your posture.
Thank you, Bhante, for guiding us in that meditation. And welcome to some other friends joining in. So Amaranta and Elaine. At this time, I'll pass things over back to Bhante Suddhaso, who will share some words of Dhamma with us.
So we'll start by paying homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Good evening, friends, and good morning, Aya Vimala, and whoever else is on the other side of the world. So this evening, the topic is disenchantment versus disgust. So where this came up was a little while back, somebody had asked, what's the difference between disenchantment and disgust? And at the time, what I said was, there's no quick answer to that. It's better to really give the proper time to explain this. So that's what we're going to do this evening. So first off, the word disenchantment. This is one translation of the Pali word nibbida. So nibbida is a noun. The verb form is nibbindati. And this comes from the prefix ner, which means down or without or stop. And the verb vindati, which means to seek for something or to find something. So the verb nibbindati literally means one stops seeking. One has put down seeking. One is no longer looking for or seeking for. And the way this term is used in the suttas indicates that what this means is that one is not seeking for conditional happiness. So I'm quite fond of the translation disenchantment, or another one I've seen is disillusionment, because disenchantment conveys a similar meaning, in that we're no longer enchanted by the things of the world. We're no longer caught in the illusion of conditional happiness. We've seen that true happiness cannot be found through sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and thought. True happiness cannot be found through wealth and fame and respect. True happiness is not found through acquisition. So disenchantment then is what naturally starts to develop in the mind when we recognize the impermanent nature of all things. When we recognize the inherently unsatisfying nature of all experiences, then naturally we start to experience disenchantment. We start to lose our interest in these things. And if one is not aware that there is a higher happiness, if one is not aware of the Buddha's teachings on unconditional happiness, if one is only aware of conditional happiness, then at this point one can fall into a state of depression. So I recall a few years back, one young person who, from past experience, I knew was quite a sensualist, quite obsessed with sensual pleasure, sensual experiences. They came on retreat, a 10-day retreat, as I recall. And a few days into the retreat, they came in and to talk to me and just said, I feel like I'm losing my source of happiness. And they said, I feel like if I continue with Buddhist practice, I'm going to lose all my sources of happiness. And I was like, what you've come to realize is that what you've thought so far was happiness was not satisfying. What you thought was happiness was actually not happiness. As Ayasoma was saying, no, it was you, wasn't it? Well, we say these things all the time. So whoever said it most recently, whether it was Ayasoma or Bhante Sumino, the other one said it not long before that. Anyways, one of them was saying was to see suffering as that, how did it go? To see pleasure as suffering. Wait.
Well, what I said was what others see as happiness, the noble ones see as suffering.
Mm.
And what Ayasoma said was to see what's pleasant as painful.
Mm. So you both said similar things recently. Okay, that's why I was confused about who said it recently.
Realistically, these were all said by Buddha.
Exactly. I mean, we're all just quoting the Buddha. That's actually one of the lovely things about being a Buddhist teacher. We are shamelessly plagiarizing, and it's okay. In fact, that's good. If I started making things up, that would be really bad. In fact, I know of one semi-famous spiritual teacher these days who actually started off as a Buddhist teacher, started off as actually quite orthodox Buddhist practitioner, and then at some point just started making things up to the point where they actually, fortunately, had the honesty to stop calling themselves Buddhist. And they invented their own religion, kind of loosely based on a mishmash of Buddhism and Hinduism and who knows what. But at least they're honest in not calling themselves Buddhist anymore. Anyway, point being, we're plagiarists and we're proud of it. We're plagiarizing the Buddhas. All Buddhas of past, present, and future, they all teach the same stuff. And we're just ripping them off shamelessly. Anyway, coming back to the topic of disenchantment. So again, this person said they felt like they were losing everything that made life pleasant, everything that made life enjoyable. And this actually was a sign that this young person was starting to understand a little bit of what disenchantment is. But this person had not yet come to grasp that there is a higher happiness. So unfortunately, at the end of that retreat, this person disappeared and we never saw them again. So I think they never quite got the message. Probably went right back to surfing and eating cheeseburgers and whatever it is they were doing. I don't know. I know they were a surfer. I don't know about anything else. And other people, though, they get a little taste of disenchantment and they don't know higher happiness. So they wind up just getting depressed and cynical. A great quote that I came across about a dozen years ago goes something like, when one begins to see the true nature of reality, one either becomes a cynical pessimist or a Buddhist. So I decided to go with the Buddhism option rather than the cynical pessimism option. So this is actually a very true statement, though. When we start to recognize the hollowness of sensual pleasure, the meaninglessness of acquisition, the pointlessness of fame, then you start to ask yourself, well, what in life is actually worth pursuing? And the answer is nothing. Nothing at all is worth pursuing. Nothing. What's worth getting? Nothing. What's worth having? Nothing. It's all utterly meaningless, pointless, and worthless. All of it. So instead, we're trying to cultivate wisdom, a wise understanding of the nature of reality. Because actually, when one is fixating only on the unpleasantness of all things, then one is actually only getting one part of the picture. Because it's true. All things are inherently unsatisfying. That's true. All things are. But there is a non-thing. There is a reality beyond things. all conditional phenomena are inherently unsatisfying, impermanent and unsatisfying. But there is that which is unconditional, beyond conditions. Anything which can be defined in terms of existence or non-existence is inherently unsatisfying. But there is that which cannot be defined in terms of existence and non-existence. Everything which arises and ceases is inherently unsatisfying. But there is that which does not arise and does not cease. And that is what we're aiming at in Buddhist practice. We're aiming at getting in touch with that which is never born and never dies. We're aiming at getting in touch with that which never arises and never ceases. And in order to do that, we must be willing to let go of everything else. We must be willing to let go of all that is impermanent, all that is temporary. We must be willing to let go of everything that is of the nature to arise and cease. So disenchantment is when we recognize that within the world of conditional phenomena, absolutely nothing is of any value, except for what we can use as a vehicle to realize the unconditioned. And that's what Buddhism is. So Buddhism is cobbled together out of conditional phenomena. It's a way of practicing, of training and developing ourselves so that we can see that which is beyond conditional phenomena. So coming back to the state of mind of nibbida, of disenchantment or disillusionment, and why it's different from disgust. So disgust is when you hate something. So for example, when you're walking down the street and you're not really paying attention to where you're going, and you almost step in some dog feces. If you have a dog, please clean up after your dog for the benefit of others. So you're walking down the street and you almost step in some dog feces and you're like, ew, oh, disgusting. What is that state of mind? And would a Buddha act like that? So that state of mind is unpleasant. It's uncomfortable. That mind of disgust, of aversion, of hatred, of irritation. It's an unpleasant state of mind. It's just more suffering. But what would an awakened being do in that same scenario? Well, first off, they would be paying attention. But even when they're close to the dog feces, they would just recognize, oh, that's feces. I'm going to avoid stepping in it. And they would go on their way. There would be no disgust in the mind because there's no hatred there. There's no aversion. There's no hostility or negativity or irritation. There's just a calm, clear recognition of things as they are. So that's another function of disenchantment. Another aspect of disenchantment is that there's a calm, clear, cool acknowledgement of the way things are. We're like, oh yeah, all things are impermanent and unsatisfying. Yeah, that's true. What's the problem? It's only a problem if you're attached to those things. It's only a problem if you think that happiness is those things. So the mind of the ordinary uninstructed worldling, the uneducated commoner, the one who does not know the Buddha's teachings, who does not develop the Buddha's wisdom, when they start to learn that all the pleasant things they know are impermanent and unsatisfying, then they're prone to falling into weeping and wailing. Like, oh, this is so horrible, losing everything I love. This is awful. Buddhism is a destroyer of happiness. So as Bhante Sumedho was talking about the heretic Magandhya in the sutta he was talking about this morning. So this misunderstanding that renunciation equals suffering. Whereas actually in Buddhist practice, we understand that renunciation equals happiness. Because we are no longer basing our happiness on things that are outside of our control. So disenchantment is actually recognizing that since all things are impermanent and unsatisfying, there's no point in basing our happiness on them. It is pointless to base our happiness on something which is unreliable and which ultimately will just cause us suffering and grief and disappointment and depression. So there's no point. So the mind of disenchantment, it's not elation and it's not depression. It's something in between. It's moving in the direction of equanimity. So a mind which is non-reactive, which is not disturbed by the unpleasant and not agitated by the pleasant. And the Buddha says in many discourses, he says, Nibindang virajati. So disenchantment causes dispassion. Then he says, viraga vimucchati. Dispassion liberates. So I'm going to verb the word dispassion because then this sounds a bit nicer in English, in my opinion. Disenchantment, dispassions. Dispassion liberates. So disenchantment causes dispassion. Dispassion causes liberation. It's actually one of my favorite lines that's repeated over and over again throughout the suttas. Nibindang virajati viraga vimucchati. Because actually that's a summary of Buddhist practice right there. That's actually all you need. That's the whole Buddhist path in 4 words. Nibindang virajati viraga vimucchati. That's the entire Buddhist path in 4 words. Anybody spontaneously obtain enlightenment? No. Me neither. So disenchantment, when we recognize that things are not worth getting passionate about, then we don't get passionate about them. And when we have no passion, lust, obsession for anything whatsoever in the entire world, then we are not trapped by anything whatsoever in the entire world. When we are not trapped by anything whatsoever in the entire world, then knowledge and vision of reality as it actually is arises. So that's the next line. So the Buddha says, Nibindang virajati, viraga vimucchati, vimuttam iti jnanam, vimuttanti. Did I say that right? Viraga vimucchati, vimuttam iti jnanam hoti. Vimuttam iti jnanam hoti. So there is knowing of liberation. There's the knowledge of liberation. So then there is the awareness that one is freed from the cycle of rebirth. So one is no longer caught in the repetitive cycle of one unsatisfying experience after another. This is the goal of Buddhism. The goal of Buddhism is freedom from the cycle of rebirth. It actually blows my mind that there's self-proclaimed Buddhists who don't believe in rebirth. Like, where does that come from? Buddhism is all about freedom from rebirth. If you don't believe in rebirth, what do you think you're doing? So it's again freedom from rebirth, freedom from the repetitive, infinite cycle of one unpleasant, unsatisfying experience after another. So again, this is pointing to what we're doing in Buddhist practice, which is we're trying to break free of the seemingly inescapable prison of cyclic existence. So this ongoing cycle of one unsatisfying experience after another. one unsatisfying state of being after another. It's like you wake up one morning and you're like, okay, this kind of sucks. There's some nice things, but some annoying things. And well, maybe tomorrow will be better. You go to sleep and you wake up the next day and you're like, no, still kind of sucks. I mean, it's not too bad. Sometimes there's cake, but the cake kind of sucks too. You can take naps, but naps kind of suck too. There's tea. Tea's pretty good, but can't drink too much. That sucks. Maybe tomorrow. So you go to sleep and you wake up and you're like, nope, still kind of sucks. Well, that's the cycle of rebirth for you. It's exactly the same. You wake up in a human body and you're like, oh, this kind of sucks. And then you die. And you wake up in a cat and you're like, oh, this kind of sucks too. And you die. And you wake up as an angel and you're like, oh, this is a little better, but actually it kind of sucks too. And then you die. Repeat, 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 repeat. And then eventually you hear about the opportunity to realize something which is truly reliable, something which is not subject to birth and death, something which is not subject to pleasure and pain, something which is not caught in this ongoing cycle of desire and aversion, moving towards and moving away. You learn about that which can truly be called stable, dependable, that which can truly be called happiness, which is awakening, it's enlightenment, it's nibbana. And we practice and we practice and we practice, but we're kind of lazy, so we forget and we don't practice very well and we die. And then we're born again in another life and it's not so great and it kind of sucks and we've forgotten the teachings of the Buddha and we waste our time pursuing silly things. And the cycle continues on and on and on and on. And then eventually we come across the teachings of the Buddha again. And we hear about the whole disenchantment thing and we're like, no thank you, no thank you. I'll stick with my surfing and my croissants and my multiple partners. That's much better. And we go through another unsatisfying life and then we die and repeat, 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 repeat. And then eventually we wind up coming across Buddhism again. But this time when we hear about disenchantment, we're like, oh, so true. How many croissants can you eat? And you're still never satisfied. How many partners can you have and you're still never satisfied? So maybe satisfaction is not found in pursuing these limited experiences. Maybe that's not true satisfaction. Maybe there's something better. And then the mind starts to turn towards dispassion. It starts to lose its interest in constantly chasing after the endless repetitive cycle of unsatisfying experiences. And when we finally completely lose interest in that repetitive cycle of experiences, then we're finally free from it. And we can finally discover unconditional happiness, which was never anywhere other than here, never any other time than now. It was always immediately accessible. Happiness is not somewhere else, it's right here and now. We're just so caught up in dreaming about some possible future pleasant experience that we're missing the opportunity to be completely happy right in this moment. All you have to do is let go of everything. That's all. It's done right in this moment. Relinquish your mental grasp. If you let go a little bit, then you get a little bit of peace, as Ajahn Chah said. And if you let go a lot, you get a lot of peace. And if you let go completely, you get complete peace. So that's another lovely little summary of Buddhism from my teacher's teacher, Venerable Ajahn Chah. If you just practice that much, you can attain full enlightenment. It's actually not complicated. So Buddhism is not complicated, it's just really difficult. But what else are you going to do? Pursue the same meaningless experiences over and over again for 100,000 lifetimes? You already did that. It sucked. And here you are again. Last time you learned about Buddhism, you screwed it up. You frittered away your lifetime and didn't get anywhere. Doing a little bit of meditation here and there, but spending most of your time senselessly pursuing sensuality and cultivating your hatred of people you don't like and things you dislike. And even though you had a taste of the Dhamma, you didn't take it seriously, which is why you went right back in the cycle. Burning through another 100,000 lifetimes of misery and torment. And here you are again. Now what? What are you going to do? What are you going to do with this opportunity? So again, the purpose of cultivating disenchantment is not to make us hate things, not to make us hate the cycle of existence, not to make us hate our bodies or our minds or our sensations, but rather to help us recognize that true happiness is not found in anything which is impermanent, in any experience which is impermanent. And there is no thing which is permanent. So we need to look beyond things. So I think that sufficiently covers the topic. So maybe we'll leave it there for now. And if there's any questions, I can take some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante, for sharing those words of Dhamma with us. And if anyone has questions, feel free to type them in on Instagram Live or YouTube Live. It's been a very exciting chat on YouTube, actually.
Interesting.
So welcome to some more friends joining in, including ones we know personally, like Adriana, Brittany.
Great. Two of my favorite people.
Also Mary, Miguel, Johan, and Amaranta, I think I said before. I think I said Jens as well. So as far as questions and comments, well, there was a lot of laughing emojis when you were talking about plagiarizing the Buddha. Ron says, it's not plagiarism if you cite the sutta. And then Mary said, no, Buddhist writings are thousands of years old. Copyright is expired. And Adriana says, cultivating, not getting. Something I need to remember more, for sure. And Amir asks, is disenchantment the same as dispassion?
No, they're not. The Buddha gives it as a causal sequence, as I mentioned during the talk. So disenchantment leads to dispassion. And they're similar, but they're not the same. You might see disenchantment as being step 1 and dispassion as step 2. Disenchantment is the bachelor's degree. Dispassion is the master's degree. Okay.
And on Instagram, Castro Beatbox says, nowadays everyone is focused on social media and objects and technology. Do you think with this kind of attachment in our lives, we can still have a free mind?
So with attachment to anything, you cannot have a free mind. It doesn't matter what it is. One of my favorite suttas is one where the Buddha gives the metaphor of a bird which is tied to a post, using a fragile piece of string. But because the bird is so small and weak, then even though it's just a fragile piece of string, the bird is trapped. It can't fly away. And he says, on the other hand, if you have an elephant tied to the post using that fragile piece of string, then it won't stop it. It will just break away and go about its business. And so then he elaborates the meaning of the simile by saying, well, what if you have a person who they're very poor. They just have this crappy little hut with only one room, and it's falling apart. It's really not the best place to live, but they're very attached to it. They've got a really annoying spouse who is actually hassling them all the time and not a nice person at all, but they're really attached to their spouse. They only have one water pitcher, and it's cracked and chipped and broken and really not a good pitcher, but they're really attached to it. And the Buddha says that person, even though the things they're attached to are really pathetic and would be considered trash by many people, because of that person's strong attachment, it's just like like as if they were bound with iron chains. But then he gives the example of then you might have someone who's extremely wealthy and has lots of really nice things, great mansion, lots of servants, really nice spouse, many really nice spouses even, lots of money, lots of really nice possessions. But if they can see the hollowness of that kind of sensual pleasure, the pointlessness of it, then it has no hold over them. Just as the elephant can easily break the string and walk away. So, in other words, there's nothing inherently wrong with technological devices. What's wrong is our attachment to them. That said, it is quite difficult to use these devices without attachment because they are designed to be addictive, as Ayasoma points out time and time again. They are designed to be addictive. They are meant to grab your attention and hold it. So it takes a strong will to use social media with self-restraint. So set clear boundaries around your use. Make it very clear what you're going to do whenever you access social media. Set clear boundaries around your phone. I recommend, one, keep your phone on silent all the time, unless you're waiting for a really important call or something. Keep your phone on silent all the time. And actually, most of the time, have it stored somewhere far away and out of reach. So here at the monastery, we have clear times when we're allowed to use technology, and most of the time we aren't. And that's really useful. So do the same thing for yourself. Have clear times when you allow yourself to use your devices and times when you vow not to. And during those times, have them stored somewhere far away and out of reach, where you can't just pick it up. Okay?
And Adine on YouTube says, it's true that renunciation brings happiness. The happiest I've ever been in my life was when all that I owned was in my rucksack and I had no obligations.
Great.
And Amaranta says, these words and the sutta from this morning are inspiring. Thank you, Bhante Sumana and Bhante Suddhaso. And Johan says, the hedonic treadmill is real.
Yeah, and actually the image of a treadmill is great because when you're on a treadmill, you feel like you're moving, but you're actually not getting anywhere. And as the Buddha says in the suttas, all you reap is weariness and disappointment. I never liked treadmills. If I was going to go for a walk or a run, I would do it outside. Treadmills always struck me as a little silly. But yeah, a treadmill is a great metaphor for samsara. It feels like you're moving, but you're not. You're just doing the same pointless thing over and over and over again.
On Instagram, Devin says, I low-key like being on the hedonic treadmill. Running is fun.
Yeah, I mean, you're welcome to do whatever you want with your life. Enlightenment is not required. You can do whatever you want. So, yeah, if you want to just keep on suffering, that's your choice. Yep.
And Jens says, Bhante, in working with euphoria and meditation, euphoria seems to be always there and arises through bringing attention to it and recognizing its pre-existence.
Mhm.
In meditation, should we direct effort to still the mind and allow the euphoria to arise naturally? Or should effort be directed to more actively cultivating the euphoria?
Try both ways. Either way can be valid. Yeah. Yeah, both ways are fine. And at different times, you'll find different approaches are more effective. So, yeah, I recommend experimenting with both approaches and seeing what happens.
And, well, maybe it's for mock chat, but we have some time. It's a short question. On Instagram Live, Purgatory Vintage Clothing says, can you be a lay Buddhist and be serious, or is being a monastic the only way?
It's more of a monk chat question. And I could give a short answer, but I think that's a monk chat question.
So, for unrelated questions, you can join us tomorrow evening, if you can, at 7:30 p.m. New York City time for a general Q&A with a panel of 3 monastics. Or you can always message us with your question, and we'll get back to you when we get back to you. And Gita says, Bhante, being able to see our past lives is only possible if one gains the Iti powers in world transcending states?
Don't worry about it. So, actually, many people can recall their past lives who haven't even practiced meditation. So, it's not necessarily a function of meditation, even. And some people progress extremely far along the path without remembering any past lives. So, don't worry about it. Being able to remember the details of one's past lives is one of the standard traits of a Buddha. So all Sammasan Buddhas have that ability. It's never actually clearly stated in the suttas whether or not all arhats have that ability. So that's a point of debate and speculation. But either way, it's not something you need to worry about. Just focus on developing morality, concentration, and wisdom. And if in the course of that you start to remember past lives, that's great. If not, don't worry about it. Because once again, it's not a requirement along the path. Okay?
On Instagram, Pantaliva Seely says, how can I reconcile the fact of the universal meaninglessness with Buddhist prescriptions for giving, morality, wisdom, and other virtues?
The simile of the raft. So the simile is one of the most famous similes from the Pali Canon. So it's the simile of a person who is trying to cross a river or a flood. The near shore is dangerous, the far shore is safe. So how do they cross? They collect whatever trash they can find on the near shore, and they make a raft. And depending on the raft, paddling with their arms and legs, they make it to the far shore. So the raft is morality, concentration, and wisdom. And it's built up of conditional phenomena. It's built up of the things of samsara. So it's built up of the same trash as everything else. But it's useful because it helps us to reach enlightenment, helps us to reach awakening. So you can build all kinds of things with conditional phenomena, but it's just most of it's not ultimately of any benefit. But some things will help you to attain awakening, and that's pretty useful. Okay.
On YouTube, Sunita asks, I want to move away from New York City to a place with more nature because I think I'll feel more peace in nature. But is this just me trying to find happiness in something that is impermanent?
Well, ultimately, that's a question you need to ask yourself. So the Buddha did praise practicing in wilderness areas and forests, away from hustle and bustle of civilization. He did praise that. But the truth is also that you can develop a peaceful mind wherever you are. You can develop wholesome mind states wherever you are. So I lived in New York City for many years, and it was fine. It's actually totally fine. Now, in a quieter place, this is also fine. So wherever you are, make it fine. Use that as your place of practice. But yeah, sometimes it is good to go somewhere else. If where you are, it's very difficult for you to practice well, then go somewhere else where it's easier. Yeah.
Come to West Orange.
And Pantaliva Vasili has a follow-up. From what kind of mind state do those virtues come from? Giving, generosity, etc. And what is there beyond this nothingness that is worth the effort?
So what's beyond it is unconditional happiness, perfect wisdom, perfect understanding of the nature of reality, freedom from all forms of suffering. So immunity to all the sorrows and difficulties and struggles of the world. That's what's beyond it. And what kind of mind does generosity and kindness and so on arise from? Well, fundamentally, it arises from compassion. The wish for beings to suffer less, to be free of suffering. That's ultimately what it comes from. So both yourself and others. So compassion for all beings, self and other included.
And Gita says, Bhante, a full understanding of dependent origination will help us to get out of samsara, and one must also develop concentration / samadhi.
You definitely need concentration. Samadhi, definitely. Full understanding of dependent origination only comes with full enlightenment. Up until then, we can only have partial understanding. So I wouldn't put too much thought into it. It's still worth studying the topic a little bit, but you don't need to worry about it too much. The general principle is what's most important. So the general principle of causality, conditionality, that all things arise based on causes and conditions. And therefore, by shaping the causes and conditions that we create, we shape what happens to us in the future. So we want to create the causes and conditions for the arising of wisdom, the arising of compassion, the arising of equanimity, the arising of concentration, the arising of disenchantment. That's what we want to do. Okay?
And Adriana says, I love it when you give us the hard truths. Always so inspiring.
Do I ever give anything else? Well, okay, my talk yesterday was a little bit rainbows and unicorns and pink butterflies and all that. But it was metta. What do you expect? No? You disagree?
And on Instagram, Devin says, isn't it a gift to live multiple lives, though?
No, it's horrible. Okay, next question.
Adine says, during meditation, when focusing on the body, that helps my mind let go, and I feel swelling piti. Is meditation meant to give us practice in letting go for our lives off the cushion?
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Yeah, and the other way is around as well. When you practice letting go outside of meditation, that makes it easier to practice letting go during meditation. So ultimately, there's no boundary line between meditation and everything else. We're trying to cultivate wholesome mind states all the time and let go of unwholesome mind states all the time. So it's not so good to draw sharp boundaries. Like during meditation, I'm trying to let go of greed, hatred, and delusion. But outside of meditation, I indulge as much as I can in greed, hatred, and delusion. If you practice in that way, then of course you'll never attain awakening. But if you're always trying to abandon greed, hatred, and delusion, regardless of whether you're meditating or not, then you will move inexorably towards awakening, however long it takes. Any other questions?
Yes. On Instagram, Nancy says, what comes before disenchantment?
Well, it depends upon the sutta. So the Buddha gives a number of different sequences of practice leading up to the disenchantment, dispassion, awakening sequence. So it depends on what sutta you look at. There's many different ways that the Buddha lays that out. Yeah.
And Sunita says she's Googling where West Orange is because Mary and Adriana have tried to convince her to also move to near the monastery.
Great.
Denise.
Peer pressure. Great.
Peer encouragement.
Yeah,
Yes.
we should get all the Buddhists in West Orange.
Sadhu. Denise, who we know, asks, is a long life good karma? If you're healthy and have a sharp mind, you can practice longer and have a better chance at awakening.
Yeah, having a long life is the result of good karma. That's true. Yeah, the Buddha clearly states this in many suttas, but the Chulakamma Vibhanga Sutta is one which I refer to often. Yeah, so that's one where he clearly states it.
Amir says, if disenchantment causes dullness and laziness, how can we energize ourselves without going into the sensory realm?
Recollect the Buddha. Okay, next.
And New York Summer on Instagram, your question's somewhat unrelated, so perhaps you can ask it tomorrow evening at 7:30 p.m. And if you can't make it, just send it to us in message format, and we'll get back to you when we can. And oh. So Devin asks on Instagram, isn't it pursuing hedonic happiness when you take time and pleasure in savoring nature, though?
It can be, yeah. Okay, next question.
Mimi says, since you said having multiple lives is bad, then why does one want to walk the bodhisattva path and keep coming back to help all beings? Is it selfish to want to get out of samsara?
So this is getting into a much more complicated issue. In fact, I should probably just give a whole Dhamma talk on the subject. It's been a little while since I've talked about this question. Ultimately compassion. Compassion is what motivates the mind. But I also want to just put in a little jab to puncture the idea that walking the bodhisattva path necessarily delays enlightenment, because that's not the case. Just to be clear on that. The bodhisattva vows do not necessarily delay enlightenment. Just to be clear. Okay, next question.
On a related note to what you just said, Nancy says, would you consider doing a talk on the Heart Sutra one day?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been in the back of my mind for quite some time.
Okay, well, it seems like that was the last question so far. Unless there's anything from the live audience here at the monastery.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So, when starting to understand and feel disenchantment, is it best to, even though we still have the desire for things, to go full out in saying I'm not going to indulge in anything? Or is there a step-by-step, a slow, experiential wisdom that comes with disenchantment?
Yeah, both actually. So he's asking, when disenchantment starts to arise, should we just go full out into renouncing everything, or is there a gradual development of disenchantment-based wisdom? And the answer I'd say is both. So the more you practice renunciation, the more you feel its benefits, the more you understand why it's important and how it shapes and trains the mind in a positive direction. And also, just naturally, as time goes by and you continue to practice the Noble Eightfold Path, then naturally your disenchantment will grow, and it will grow in a balanced way through understanding. So rather than someone telling you, you should give up candy, you just naturally will stop eating candy. For example, not that there's anything wrong with candy per se, but just as an example, if you normally are addicted to candy, then at some point you'll just start to realize that it's actually not happiness. It's just a form of sickness, actually. And so naturally you'll start to lose your interest in it. One of the similes the Buddha uses that I find helpful is of children and toys. It says when you're a child, you really love playing with toys. You have lots of toys and you really like your toys. But as the child gets older, at some point it just naturally starts to lose interest in toys. So the Buddha says that's what it's like as our disenchantment grows. We're like a child that's getting older and is starting to realize that all those worldly things we were into are just as meaningless as a child's toys. We lose our interest in them. So it's turning the mind towards something more mature, a more mature happiness. Okay? Any other questions? No? Okay.
All right, so it seems like that's it for tonight. So thanks everyone for joining us. Adriana says, thank you so much again, always, to Bhante and everyone at Empty Cloud and all the friends on here. And Yudi says it was an inspiring talk tonight. And lots of thank yous. Also on Instagram from Nancy, Felipe, and others. So thanks everyone for joining us. Tomorrow morning, we'll have Sutta study again at 8 a.m. And then at 7:30 p.m., monk chat for any leftover unanswered questions. So you can join us then. We can end tonight with 3 sadhus.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
And enjoy the rest of your night.